Hey, how's it going, guys? Yasukeh here. I have found a brand new, insanely busted build that brought me from Diamond 1 to 325 LP Grandmasters in less than a week, which would make me the highest rated Tryndamere on any single major region server. This build is one of the strongest that I've ever seen for Tryndamere, and I wanted to make this video to help you possibly understand this build a little bit more. This is a build that I actually had no faith in when I first saw it. It was a random gold viewer who recommended me this build because no high elo player would be dumb enough to find a build that was this that's this crazy. So this is the rating that we went to. Promoted to Masters on the 30th, and we got to 325 LP today, and there is no stopping us. I'm very confident in hitting Challenger very soon. Every single game is just massive mid difference, and I think that this build is one of the strongest that Tryndamere has ever had, but it also is one of the lowest damage builds that has ever been seen on Tryndamere. And that sounds really weird, right? But this build has the most utility that I've ever seen in any Tryndamere build ever. So first off, let's just get started on the build order. First off, I start boots, rejuve bead, and a pot. The reason I start boots is because I think lucidity boots are one of the strongest rushes in the entire game. You effectively get 17% CDR and 12 summoner spell haste for 600 gold, along with the movement speed. And an interesting thing with Tryndamere is that since his Q is sustain, cooldown reduction effectively acts like sustain. And reason you buy a bead is because it sells for a really good price. Tryndamere has a high base health regen, so you go that, and it's since it sells for 90-95, you only lose 45 gold on it, which is less than you would for any other kind of starting item. It allows you to back at 500 gold and get your CDR boots. And that's really powerful because being able to get to lane quicker and getting around the map quicker is really valuable for getting kind of different back timings. And then also, movement speed really does help you play trades differently. It makes it easier to dodge skill shots, makes it easier to kite people, easier to assist with ganks, get out of ganks, etc, etc. And the next item that we build is Stride Breaker. Now, Stride Breaker is an item that nobody builds on Trynd. Not a single person, except for me. And I am the highest ranked Tryndamere in the world on a major server right now. But Stride Breaker, even though it has no crit, even though it has health, even though it's an item that doesn't really seem to be a Tryndamere item, this is the item that you'd see Garen's build, this item you see Darius's, Nar's, Bruiser's build. But there's so many reasons why it's great on Tryndamere. Biggest thing is the utility. Having that slow that can be attached to everything on basically a 15 or so second cooldown helps you not only make picks that should be impossible, but they also help you get out of situations that you shouldn't be able to get out of. You can proc the Stride Breaker on somebody else and then just run away. And we'll go in a game later to show you different ways that you can play around with that. One other benefit of it is Iron Spike helps with your clear so much. A big issue that came along with Season 11 Tryndamere is that he wasn't able to farm jungle camps anymore because of Tiamat removal. And now you can go back to that. You can go back to farming camps safely without losing too much gold. Without losing too much health, rather. So Iron Spike helps you push out waves really easily, and it helps you get so much gold. And even if you do get behind, Stride Breaker is one of the best items that would help you get back into the game because of how much faster it helps you farm. Another aspect is Heartbound Axe, and also how it goes into the Stride Breaker. You get 30 movement speed for 2 seconds when you auto attack something. That makes your in combat movement speed really, really, really high, and it makes it really hard to get away from you. And it makes it really easy for you to get out of situations because you can just auto attack things as you're running away, and you'll get a ton of movement speed. And then you pair that with Phantom Dancer, which gives you 14% movement speed when you hit something. You get 484 movement speed in combat before Phase Rush. And that's an insane amount. No other champion in the game has that amount of movement speed. And Stride Breaker also gives you more MS for every legendary item you get. So the amount of movement speed that you're going to be getting later and later that it goes on is just going to be insane. You can regularly easily get to like 700-800 movement speed within games. And that is just so much strong utility, and how that changes the way that you can play fights. You can get in, do all of the damage that you can, and then get out with like no chance of them ever chasing you. I think of any of the strong champions that would generally outrun Tryndamere. None of those exist anymore. Tryndamere with this build is the fastest champion in the game when it comes to like running across the map. And so that gives you so many interesting situations about how you can chase people and how you can get all that set up. So next item is a little bit situational. You could either go Hydra, which will further increase the farming and is also good sustain, or you could go something like Blade of the Rune King, Essence Raver, Infinity Edge. After that point, it doesn't necessarily matter as much what you build. There's still a lot of experimentation to be done there, and there's not really anything there for certain. I've been testing out Bork today. It feels okay. Hydra still probably feels like the most consistent third item right now. And then I've generally been going IE fourth. In this particular game, I didn't. But you would get those crit items. And then also, once you have 5 items, if you get into a really long late game situation where you're fed, you can sell your boots and buy a Serelda's or something, get armor pen, get more damage, and you will still have way more movement speed than anybody in the game, even though you don't have boots. I had 80 plus more MS than a Samira in one of my games, who had boots too, when I had no boots, and that was my base movement speed without the in-combat abilities or anything like that. So the amount of utility in this build, insane. The amount of catch potential is really, really strong, and teamfight utility is also really, really big. Just imagine being in a situation where you go into a teamfight, you spin onto a bunch of people, you press Stride Breaker, everybody is slowed. It's so much easier for your team to actually do some damage or do some things there that, like, it's completely ridiculous, especially with a lot of champions trying to play the in and out game. You kind of prevent champions from being able to get away, and it makes it to where, like, if you can get the Stride Breaker onto the AD carry, it makes it to where either you or the rest of your team can get that kill on them very, very quickly. Rune page that I take for this is the same rune page that I've always taken, but I think that it's really important that you take it with this build and not lethal tempo. Is Phase Rush. Going Phase Rush, Nimbus Cloak gives you extra movement speed. Celerity is a big part of this build, because Celerity makes all of your other movement speed bonuses 7% more effective. So the MS that you're getting from Phantom Dancer, Stride Breaker, the Mythic passive, boots, really just everything. Phase Rush gets a lot more stronger when you take Celerity, so I think it's really, really important to get that. Gathering Storm is just the best. Legend Tenacity. Tryndamere cannot do any damage if you're CC'd, and this also greatly increases the annoyance of Tryndamere, because it's so much harder to lock you down. This build goes completely against everything that people think about when they think about how to deal with Tryndamere. Because the idea of how to deal with Tryndamere is just kite him until his ult is done. With this build, you're never going to get kited again, ever. You have 800 movement speed, you can easily get 48% tenacity. You will be able to always stick to your targets no matter what, and also help your team stick to the targets. And this build has done absolute wonders for me. I expect to be Challenger very soon. If I hit Challenger soon, I would be the first Tryndamere to hit Challenger on a major region server. So these are a lot of aspects of the build. We can go into a practice tool and I can show you a couple combos of what to do with this build. Get in the game. Chromas, I like white, purple, you know. What do you guys think is a good chroma? Let me know down below. So we're gonna get in the game. All right, game is starting. Got just a random bot, doesn't really matter. All right, so generally you start boots. You can teleport, and by default celerity gives you 6 extra movement speed, and with that boots gives you 375, which is more than any other champion would really have in this kind of situation. Against a lot of champions in lane, my game crashed, but you know, that sometimes happens, it's okay. That's a little bit awkward, but we're going to roll with it. So, gonna get in the game. 1 second. Also, Stride Breaker gives a phase rush stack. So you can spin on somebody, you can slow somebody, spin on them, and Stride Breaker away, and it'll proc phase rush. It's really, really, really strong. All right, we got back into the same game. So, couple things. Let's just get a couple levels. Let's say we're back at level 5. And we get boots. And then if you have enough gold to get Iron Spike, I generally get Iron Spike. But if you don't, I'll just get these 2 components right here, and then build in a Heartbound Axe. Now, generally, Tryndamere builds involve either Kraken Slayer or Gale Force, and the item that builds into that is Noon Quiver, which is a really bad item. It's so bad. But Heartbound Axe, similar stats, but instead of extra damage to minions, you get movement speed on attack, which is really, really strong. Right now I have 420 MS in combat, which is really, really powerful. And let's say I'm getting ganked from that top side. All I gotta do is either hit the champion or hit a minion, and then I have a lot of movement speed to get out. And that also helps with any kind of rotation that you're doing to killing the jungler at their camps. And always just do that. Kite up a little bit, take the jungle camp, try to kill them, things like that. And then once you get enough golds to get your Stride Breaker, this is where the real fun begins. And pretty much no matter how far behind you were at this point, once you get this, you will always have so much value. Couple examples. Let's spawn a enemy dummy. So one thing you can do is get the slow, auto attack. Whoops. So you can Stride Breaker and then get on them and then chase them down as they're going, and I have a lot of movement speed right now. And it's only going to get more the higher my build goes. But yeah, say this person is chasing me. I'm over here, I'm running away. I can just Stride Breaker and then spin away. And that's also a really interesting poke thing that you can do in kind of handshake situations. What you can do is, let's say they're in mid lane right now. You just Stride Breaker them and then spin away, and they'll think that you're engaging on them, but you're not engaging on them. And that way, you can force them to burn things that they otherwise wouldn't have burned. So like, example of doing that is like that. And then right there, when I had Stride Breaker, it's pretty much impossible for him to get away at this point. The amount of movement speed that I have right now, even if it wasn't a bot, this would be really, really powerful. And going back into here, another also just useful strategy is getting minions low and then spinning through to get Fury. That's something that's really going to be valuable for the early trades, but that's something that's always valuable. But big thing here is just stealing jungle camps. So you can take the camp right here. Generally want to get a ward right here. You don't need to auto-attack any of the small ones because the 2 spins plus Stride Breaker is enough to kill. And you generally gain health on it because of the fury that you get from attacking the minions. And so those are a couple examples of Stride Breaker mechanics. And once you get Phantom Dancer, first of all, this gives you 7% MS, which is really, really, really strong. You get your Phantom Dancer, you go over here, and I'll show you exactly what to get at a point. So by default, you have 434 MS, and when you auto attack, well, it was 435, and now it's 484, which is insane the amount of movement speed you get, and that's before you slow them. That's before Phase Rush. And now, how much is it with Phase Rush with just 2 items? Along with 40% ability haste. It's 591, and that's without any other boosts. The more items you get, the more movement speed you get because of the mythic passive bonus. So it's very, very powerful, the amount of movement speed you have, which a lot of people get Navori because they think of it as a mobility item. But how much more valuable is getting movement speed over having more of a spin cooldown? One thing with movement speed is that it doesn't matter if the enemy is kiting you at any point and you can't get auto attacks on them. Sometimes when you're running a Navori build, you'll go away and then they'll flash away, and then all of a sudden you're chasing them and you can't get an auto attack on them and you can't actually proc your Navori. But when you have a ton of MS, it does not matter where they go. You will always be faster than them no matter what. And you're also able to save your spins for more useful times like trying to get over walls and stuff. So those are a couple examples with this. One thing is that this build does have a little bit less damage, so you aren't necessarily going to be good in, say, a 1v1 with a Camille in a side lane. But also, in situations where you can't win a 1v1, you always can just Stride Breaker and get out. You get a bunch of movement speed, they're slowed. And interesting things about that is that, say, if you are split pushing a side lane, if you're split pushing a side lane, all of a sudden 3 people come to you, you can just proc Phase Rush and then get out with insane movement speed. And nobody can really chase you at that point, especially even if they do get to you. That just allows you to auto-attack them again and get even more movement speed. And then once I get Hydra, that's 60 CDR, and then my spin is up at a very respectable rate. 5 seconds at this point with just 3 items. No Navori, no nothing. And this is just really, really powerful. And then can kind of just go from camp to camp and get everything. But this build has increased my CS by so much because of just this kind of stuff. You can just farm the entire jungle really, really quickly. And you can also do that on your way to fights. So one general thing with Tryndamere is that you want to, if you can't get the 1v1 in the lane, especially with this build with how much movement speed you have, you want to push the wave, go into Fog of War, and then try to flank the enemy, especially with how strong this build is in teamfights. You want to get a flank, which will either burn the enemy TP, or if they don't have TP, you just have an automatic 4v5. So right here, I can just get the flank on this guy, and all of a sudden I have target access to their backline. And with Stridebreaker, getting that slow, it'll make it so much easier for the rest of my team to get onto them right now. Because it's possible that you misplay your Mocking Shout or that they outplay it. But Stridebreaker will always work. And it also gives you extra slow potential for getting these kind of plays set up. And those are just a couple things with it. And in teamfights, if you get low in teamfights, you can still play the teamfights. So let's say I'm getting low right now, and I'm unable to particularly stay in the fight. I will kind of play outside of the fight, and then whenever I can, go for slows or go for Stridebreaker and then get out. And that gives you so much value to your team, because once Tryndamere uses his ult, it's really dangerous for him to ever be in a early, or rather in any team fights, because you just die like nothing. And then the also other important point is that ideally you try to burn everything you can in a team fight, get as much damage that you can off. And let's say the team fight is still going, you just leave the fight. Let's say there's a fight over here at Dragon that I just left. I just go mid and I just push the wave. And so that's giving me guaranteed value, because I can always push this. And since everybody else is fighting here, it wouldn't matter if I was 100 HP with no ults. And then if they come over here to chase me, I can just go over the wall. And then Stridebreaker is also really good at getting out of those situations, just because of the little MS. And little dash gives you a dodge of a skill shot. Let's say somebody's trying to charm me right now as like an Ahri. Yeah, let's just say I'm trying to go over here, get charmed by an Ahri. Let's go, get that. Dodge a skill shot, got out, and everything was just perfectly fine. But yeah, this build is massive utility. Don't try to play the typical 1v1 style with this build in a side lane. You are one of the strongest team fighters in the game with this build, and it doesn't matter how far behind you are. You will always be of value here. One way of how you play games when you're behind is you want to soak up as much CC and ultimates as possible so that the rest of your team doesn't have to deal with them. So if you're in a situation where you're behind with this kind of build, you just get everything you can off, and then you leave. But yeah, this is a very good build to not only help your team, but get picks that you otherwise wouldn't be able to get. One thing is just the generally high movement speed, extra clear time, so that also means you're going to be higher level than most people. So that's going to be really good. The pick potential of getting picks that you otherwise never would have been able to get is just really strong. And this build seems to be the best build that I've ever seen to possibly climb. And it doesn't do a lot of damage. And it was recommended to me by a gold player. But with this build, I was able to climb up from Diamond 1 to 325 LP in less than a week. And I have just been completely destroying every game. And this wasn't even a mid game. This was a top game against Someday, who is generally considered one of the best top laners in NA, if not the world. He is a very good player, and I also had to deal with him getting double buffs early because my jungler died to them. And I was still able to come back from this game, still able to provide a lot of utility. There's just a lot of situations in which Tryndamere can do a lot. I regularly get games like... yeah, let me just show you another example of a game. Is this right here. I actually got killed a couple times in lane, and I was pretty far behind, but I was still able to provide so much value to my team, getting 20 assists, 47% kill participation, just by slowing and playing the rest of the game. And even if you aren't behind and if you're ahead, that just means that you can get picks in situations that you otherwise never would have been able to. And having that kind of utility is great in this meta where Tryndamere doesn't necessarily have a build that allows him to 1v1 stronger champions like Camille and Fiora. It's really hard to play Tryndamere the way that we used to. So I think a build like this will do you so much more in terms of giving us success in these otherwise desperate times. So, see you guys all next time. Have a wonderful day. Try out the build, let me know what you think. Just to clarify, it is Boots, Lucidity Boots, Stride Breaker, Phantom Dancer, and situational, but generally Ravenous Hydra. See you guys all in the next video. Have a wonderful day. Goodbye and good night. Yeet!